Welcome to Subscribe. Continuously updated.
The backyard of Ethan's mom's house looked like a magazine spread, white tents, yellow lights strung between two old oaks, and 62 people holding cups of sweet tea and lemonade. Kids ran in the grass. Somebody's uncle was already telling the same football story from 1998. You know, the kind of reunion where everything looks perfect but you can feel something curling at the edges, like a sandwich left out too long. I was standing by the dessert table, holding a sweaty glass of tea, watching my 7-year-old Anna carefully place a tiny bow on a gift box. She always did that, made things pretty even when nobody asked. She'd drawn a sunflower on the wrapping paper with her own markers. It was crooked, but it was hers. I told her it looked beautiful. She'd grinned, that little gap in her front teeth showing. Then Grandma Agnes arrived. You gotta understand, Agnes is Ethan's mother, and she's the kind of woman who still sends handwritten thank you cards but means every passive-aggressive word. She walked over in her peach-colored dress, the one she always wore when she wanted to look like the kindest person in the room, and she looked down at Anna's gift. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, loud enough for 10 people to hear, "what did you make? A potato stamp project?" A couple of women nearby chuckled. Not mean, just polite. You know how it is, when the matriarch makes a joke, you laugh. Anna's face flickered. She's 7, so she doesn't know how to hide hurt yet. She looked up at me, and I swear I saw her little heart squeeze. I put my hand on her shoulder. "She spent all morning on that," I said, real calm. "I think it's lovely." Agnes bent down, smiling that smile that never touched her eyes. "Darling, at a family reunion, we dress up. We don't just wear leggings and a t-shirt with a cartoon dog." Anna looked down at her shirt. It was a gift from my sister. A little corgi with a superhero cape. She'd been so excited to wear it. Now she was trying to cover it with her hands. "Mom," Ethan said, finally walking over, a half-eaten deviled egg in his hand, "she's just a kid." But Agnes didn't even look at him. She reached out and fussed with Anna's hair, which I'd pulled into 2 slightly uneven ponytails this morning because Anna wanted to match. "And what's this? Did Daddy do your hair?" "No, wait. Mommy did." "I can tell." She said the word mommy the way you'd say a raccoon in the trash can. I felt my jaw tighten, but I didn't say anything. Because this was Ethan's family, and I was the in-law. The one who didn't go to church enough. The one who worked full-time, and apparently that meant I didn't care about my daughter. You know the script. But then Agnes did something else. She picked up the gift box, the one Anna had spent 40 minutes wrapping, and she peeled off the sunflower drawing, very slowly, in front of everyone. "I appreciate the effort, sweetie, but let's make it look nice for the table, okay? Grandma will fix it." The paper ripped. Not all the way, but enough. Anna didn't cry. She just stood there, frozen. Then she whispered, "I want to go home." I knelt down, right in the grass, my dress getting grass stains, and I pulled her close. I whispered in her ear, "I'm so sorry, baby. We'll leave soon. I promise." Now here's what the 62 guests didn't see. Ethan saw all of it. His mom humiliated our little girl in front of the whole clan, and he just stood there, chewing his deviled egg like he was watching a commercial. I looked at him. I gave him the look, the one a wife gives her husband that means, say something, defend your daughter, for God's sake. But he swallowed his egg and said, "Mom's just trying to help. You know how she gets." That was the moment. Not the moment I got angry. I'd been angry for years. No, it was the moment I realized I was completely alone in this family. That my husband, the man who promised to love and protect us, would always choose his mother's comfort over his daughter's heart. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not sadness. Clarity. The kind of clarity a person gets when they finally see the real shape of a problem. I stood up. I held Anna's hand. And I smiled. Not a nice smile. Not a forgiving smile. The kind of smile that says, okay. Now I know what I'm dealing with. Agnes was already walking toward the microphone they'd set up for the family memories part of the reunion. She loved that microphone. She used it every year to talk about how important family was, how we all need to support each other, how love is patient and kind. I'm telling you, she could quote Corinthians while stepping on a child's crayon drawing and not see the irony. She tapped the mic. Hello, everyone. Can I have your attention? The crowd quieted. Aunt Martha set down her Jell-O salad. Uncle Rick stopped his fishing story mid-cast. Even the teenagers looked up from their phones. I squeezed Anna's hand and whispered, "Sweetheart, I need you to go sit with Aunt Claire by the big tree." "Can you do that?" She looked up at me, her eyes still wet but holding on to my voice. "Are we leaving?" "In a bit," I said. "First, Mommy's going to tell a story." She knew my voice. That quiet, steady one that only came out when I'd made my mind up about something important. She nodded and walked over to Claire, who gave me a confused look. I just nodded back. Agnes was already into her speech. "Before we eat, I want to take a moment to talk about the bonds that hold this family together." I reached into my purse. It was a big, battered leather thing I'd had since before Anna was born, full of receipts and crayons and half-eaten granola bars. Underneath all that junk, my fingers found it, an envelope. Not a big envelope. Just a standard white one. But it was heavy with what was inside. I'd been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. The right reason. I'd almost thrown it away twice. But every time, something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Or fear. Or just the stubborn hope that I wouldn't need it. Now I needed it. I stood up straight. I started walking toward the microphone. Ethan saw me first. He was standing near the barbecue pit, holding a new plate of food, and when he saw the envelope in my hand, his face went through 3 expressions really quick. Confusion. Recognition. And then something I'd never seen before on my husband's face. Terror. He dropped his plate. Plastic fork and all. "Lily," he said, but it came out strangled. "Lily, wait." Agnes heard him and turned, the microphone still in her hand. She saw me walking toward her, the envelope held gently like a weapon you don't want to use but have to. "What's this?" she said, trying to keep a smile on. "Lily, dear, we're about to pray." The 62 guests, all of them, turned to look at me. I could feel their eyes. I could hear the sudden quiet, the way the whole world gets still before something big happens. I stopped 2 feet from Agnes. I looked at her. I looked at Ethan, who looked like he was about to be sick. Then I looked out at the sea of relatives, some still holding their forks, some whispering, all of them curious. I raised the envelope just a little. Not dramatic. Just enough so people could see it. "Before you pray, Agnes," I said, my voice carrying through the silent yard, "I think everyone here deserves to know what kind of family they're really part of." Ethan started walking toward me, but he was too far away. Too slow. Too late, just like he'd been for 7 years. I held the envelope up higher, and the whole reunion held its breath. And that's when everything went quiet. Not the normal hush of a party pausing for a speech. The deep, awful quiet of 62 people suddenly realizing the show they thought they were watching isn't the show they're actually in. I took a breath. And I began to open the envelope. The paper inside wasn't new. It was folded 3 times, the creases soft like it had been opened and closed 100 times. I'd done it myself, late at night, sitting in the minivan in the garage with the engine off, just staring at the words and wondering if I was the crazy one. Now I wasn't wondering anymore. I unfolded it slowly, and you could hear the crinkle of paper across that whole backyard. Nobody breathed. Even the wind seemed to cut out. Out of the corner of my eye I saw Anna at the far picnic table, her hand in my sister's hand, watching me like I was about to do a magic trick. She didn't know. She thought Mommy was going to make everything better. God, I hoped she was right. I didn't look at Ethan. I could feel him frozen 10 feet away, his mouth open, his face the color of old milk. But I didn't need to look. I knew exactly what he looked like. I'd seen that look once before, the night he came home 3 hours late with a shirt that smelled like perfume and a story so full of holes it couldn't hold water. That was the night I started digging. Most of you know my husband Ethan, I said, and my voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. You know him as the guy who helps you move furniture. The guy who brings the good beer to the barbecue. The guy who loves his mama. A few people nodded. Agnes was still standing by the head of the table, her prayer hands still clasped, but her eyes had gone sharp. Like a hawk spotting something moving in the grass. What you don't know, I said, is that for the past 3 years, Ethan has been telling people a little story about me. About his poor wife. You know the one. Lily's so tired all the time. Lily can't handle things. That's why he helps out so much. That's why he misses work. That's why he's always on his phone. Because Lily is fragile. I saw my sister-in-law Karen shift in her chair. I saw my neighbor Donna look down at her plate. They'd heard the story. Hell, everybody had heard the story. Ethan had been spreading it like butter on toast, making himself look like a saint while I looked like a woman who was one bad Tuesday away from falling apart. It's a good story, I said. I almost believed it myself. Because when your husband tells you over and over that you're struggling, that you're emotional, that you're not remembering things right, you start to wonder. You start to think maybe he's right. Maybe you are crazy. Ethan found his voice then. It came out croaky and desperate. Lily, come on. This isn't the place. You're upset about what happened with Anna, I get it, but let's talk about this at home. No, I said, and the word landed like a rock in a pond. No, Ethan. You don't get to decide the place anymore. You've been deciding everything for 7 years. Tonight, I'm deciding. I held up the paper. It was a bank statement. Not just any bank statement. A statement from an account at First Community Bank, opened 3 years ago, in a town 40 miles north. A town called Millbrook. A town where Ethan told me he went for work training 4 times a year. A town where, as it turns out, there was a very nice little rental house on Maple Street. This is a joint checking account, I said, opened by my husband Ethan and a woman named Denise Carruthers. You don't know Denise. Ethan met her at a conference 3 years ago. She's a pharmaceutical sales rep, she's 26 years old. And according to these records, Ethan has been giving her $2,000 a month for the past 18 months. The silence got deeper. The kind of silence that feels like pressure in your ears. Someone dropped a fork. It clattered on a plate and went still. Agnes's hands came unclasped. Her face didn't fall. Agnes wasn't the type to crumble. But something shifted behind her eyes. I couldn't tell if it was shock or calculation. That's not all, I said, and now my voice had an edge. I pulled out a second paper from the envelope. A printout of text messages. I didn't even remember how many nights I'd spent screenshotting them from Ethan's old phone, the one he'd lost but had actually just shoved in the back of his closet because he forgot to delete the cloud backup. Amateur. I read one out loud, not because I wanted to, but because I needed every person in that yard to understand. From Ethan to Denise, September 12th. I can't wait to start our real life. Just have to figure out the Lily situation. She's getting worse, honestly. I think she might need real help. Then we can be together. End quote. Ethan made a sound like a man who'd been punched in the gut. He took a step toward me, but my brother Mike stood up from his chair. Mike's a big guy, ex-army, and he didn't say a word. He just stood there, arms crossed, and Ethan stopped moving. You told people I was unstable, I said, looking right at my husband. You told your boss I was having mental health problems so you could take extra time off. You told your mother I was struggling to cope, so she'd come over and criticize everything I did, and you could say, "See, even Mom thinks so." You were building a paper trail, Ethan. A paper trail to get me declared unfit. So you could take Anna. So you could take my house. So you could move your 26-year-old girlfriend into my life and pretend I never existed. I turned to Agnes. And you? You knew. Maybe not about Denise. But you knew he was telling people I was crazy. You encouraged it. Because if I was the problem, then your perfect son was still perfect. And if I was out of the picture, you'd get Anna all to yourself. No competition. Agnes's mouth opened. That is absolutely, don't, I said. Don't you dare stand there and lie to me. I have 12 months of your text messages to Ethan. You deserve better, honey. Don't let her drag you down. A real wife would be grateful. I've got them all, Agnes. You want me to read those too? She didn't answer. Her face had gone white, a stark white against the bright pink of her blouse. The relatives were staring at her now. Not at me. At her. At Ethan. The whole dynamic had flipped like a pancake, and everyone could see the burnt side. My cousin Rachel, who always acted like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, suddenly said, "Jesus Christ, Agnes. You told me Lily was bipolar." I never said, Agnes started, but half a dozen voices cut her off. People were remembering things now. Little comments. Little questions. The way Agnes had been so quick to tell anyone who asked that poor Lily just had her struggles. The way Ethan always looked like a hero for sticking it out. I watched it happen in real time. The logic that Ethan and Agnes had built, the whole careful framework of lies, was eating itself alive. Because once you saw the pattern, you couldn't unsee it. Every kindness from Ethan was manipulation. Every concern from Agnes was poison. And 62 people, sitting in a hot backyard with cold burgers and cheap wine, were seeing it all at once. It was beautiful. It was horrible. It was both. Ethan's phone buzzed. He didn't reach for it. He just stood there, a man falling through ice. So here's what's going to happen, I said. The paper trembled in my hand, but my voice was steady. I'm taking Anna home. We're going to eat ice cream and watch a movie, and she's going to go to sleep knowing that her mother will never, ever let anyone treat her the way I've been treated for 7 years. Ever of her life. That's my daughter. She deserves better. And I'm going to give it to her. I looked at Ethan. You're not coming home tonight. Or any night. The locks are changed. Your clothes are in garbage bags on the porch. Your precious truck, which, by the way, I paid off with my inheritance money, is parked in the driveway. You can have it. I don't want anything from you except one thing. What? He whispered. You're going to sign the divorce papers that my lawyer sent you last week. The ones you ignored because you thought I was too weak to follow through. And you're going to give me full custody of Anna. No fight. No court. Because if you fight, I will release every single piece of evidence I have to your boss, to your clients, to the whole damn town. I will make sure that every person you ever tried to shake hands with knows exactly what kind of man you are. He stared at me. His mouth moved but no sound came out. That's the deal, I said. Take it or leave it. Then I turned to Agnes. She was gripping the back of a chair now, her knuckles white. The speech she'd been about to give, the whole family unity performance, was dead in the water. Everyone knew it. She knew it. Agnes, I said, you will never speak to me or my daughter that way again. You will not call. You will not visit. You will not send gifts that are actually insults wrapped in ribbon. If Anna wants to see you when she's older, that will be her choice. But for now, you are not part of our lives. And if I hear one word, one single word, of you badmouthing me to anyone in this family, I will forward those text messages to every bridge club, church group, and garden committee in the county. Are we clear? She didn't answer. She just stared at me like I was a stranger. And I was. I was a stranger to all of them. The quiet Lily. The patient Lily. The Lily who bit her tongue and smiled and brought the potato salad and never complained. She was gone. And standing in her place was a woman who had spent 3 weeks staying up until 3 a.m., printing bank statements and text logs, writing out everything she wanted to say in a spiral notebook, crying until her chest hurt, and then waking up the next morning to make Anna's lunch like nothing was wrong. I folded the papers back into the envelope. My hands were sweating. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my temples. But I wasn't scared anymore. I looked out at the 62 guests. Some of them were crying. Some of them looked furious, at Agnes, at Ethan, maybe at me. A few were already pulling out phones, because that's what people do when a family explodes in front of them. Let them. Let the whole world know. I'm sorry you all had to see this, I said. But some truths can't wait for a better time. Then I walked across the grass, past my white-faced husband, past my stone-silent mother-in-law, and I went to my daughter. Anna looked up at me with those big brown eyes. She'd eaten a cookie. The crumbs were still on her chin. Mommy, did you tell the story? I knelt down and brushed the crumbs away. Yeah, baby. I told the story. Was it a good one? I picked her up, and she was so light in my arms, so small and perfect in mine. It wasn't a happy story, I said. But it was the true one. And sometimes true stories are the most important kind. She nodded, like she understood. Maybe she did. Kids are smarter than people think. We walked out of that backyard, past the pool that cost more than my first car, past the rosebushes Agnes bragged about every summer, past the big wooden sign that said family is everything. My sister followed us. Mike opened the gate for us. And nobody tried to stop us. Behind me, I heard someone start crying. I didn't turn around. The envelope was in my pocket, warm from my hand. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was just paper. But it had done what it needed to do. In the van, Anna fell asleep before we hit the main road. I drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on her little leg, feeling her breathe. The sunset was orange and pink, the kind of sky you see in paintings at a motel. It was beautiful. It was ordinary. It was the first night of the rest of my life. And I was ready. The morning after the reunion I woke up at 5:47 a.m. Not because Anna was crying. Not because my phone was buzzing. Just because my body didn't know how to sleep past sunrise anymore. 3 years of being the first one up. 3 years of making sure the coffee was ready before Ethan's feet hit the floor. 3 years of tiptoeing around my own house. Old habits die hard, I guess. We were at my sister's place. Her guest room smells like lavender candles and old books. Anna was curled up next to me, her little hand still holding my sleeve like she was afraid I'd disappear in the dark. I didn't move. I just lay there watching the ceiling fan go around and around and around. My phone had 73 notifications. I didn't check a single one. You want to know the strangest part about blowing up your entire life at a family barbecue? The next morning the sun still comes up. The birds still sing. The coffee maker still gurgles. The world doesn't stop spinning just because your marriage is a smoking crater. Around 7 my sister Jen knocked softly on the door. She'd been amazing through all of this. Didn't ask questions. Didn't push. Just made up the guest room and put a glass of water on the nightstand and told me I could stay as long as I needed. Lily, she whispered. You awake? Yeah. She came in with 2 mugs of coffee. The good kind with the foam on top. She sat on the edge of the bed and handed me one. We didn't say anything for a minute. Just drank our coffee while Anna snored softly between us. Mike called this morning, Jen said finally. He said people are losing their minds. Aunt Carol apparently drank half a bottle of Chardonnay and started screaming at Agnes. Called her a monster. In front of the pastor. I took a sip of coffee. It was hot. Burned my tongue a little. Good. Also, Ethan's been blowing up my phone. He's been calling every hour since midnight. I blocked him, but he keeps leaving voicemails. She hesitated. You want me to delete them? No. Save them. My lawyer said to save everything. Jen raised her eyebrows. Your lawyer. Listen to you. When did you get a lawyer, Lily? Last week you couldn't even decide what brand of paper towels to buy without Ethan's approval. I looked at Anna. Her little face was so peaceful. No idea that her whole world had cracked in half yesterday. About 2 months ago, I said. Right after I found the cloud backup. See, here's what nobody knew. Not Ethan. Not Agnes. Not even Jen. 2 months ago I found everything. Not just the bank statements. Not just the texts. I found the whole plan. Ethan had been documenting my so-called mood swings for almost a year. Little notes on his phone. Lily cried for no reason today. Lily yelled at Anna for spilling juice. Lily stayed in bed until noon. Stuff that sounds bad out of context. Stuff that makes a person look unstable. Only here's the thing. I wasn't unstable. I was exhausted. I was raising a child basically alone while working part-time and managing a house and dealing with a mother-in-law who criticized everything I did. Some days I cried because I was tired. Some days I yelled because I was human. And some days I stayed in bed because honestly getting up felt impossible. That isn't mental illness. That's just life. But Ethan had a different story. In his version I was a danger. To myself. To Anna. To the family. And he was the long-suffering husband patiently trying to get his wife help. See how that works? He doesn't just leave. He doesn't just cheat. He makes himself into the hero and me into the problem. He gets the new girlfriend the fresh start and the sympathy of everyone around him. And I get a prescription for antidepressants and a psychiatrist who thinks I'm paranoid. That was the plan. And it almost worked. I found the cloud backup by accident. Ethan had lost his phone 6 months ago and got a new one. But he forgot to wipe the old cloud account. It was all there. The texts to his mother. The emails to a lawyer about custody options. The messages to the girlfriend, some pharmaceutical rep named Denise with blonde highlights and a convertible. The notes about my behavior. The plan. I sat in the bathroom for 3 hours that night reading every single file. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. But I didn't cry. Funny, right? The moment I finally had proof that my husband was trying to destroy me, I stopped crying. I just went cold. From the inside out. That's when I called the lawyer. Her name is Patricia Okonkwo. She's a Nigerian-American woman in her 50s who wears these incredible bright-colored scarves and has a voice like a cello. When I told her my story, she listened for 45 minutes without interrupting. Then she said, Mrs. Morrison, I've handled 214 divorce cases in my career. And I can tell you right now your husband is not as smart as he thinks he is. I loved her immediately. Patricia helped me get my ducks in a row. We made copies of everything. We documented all of Ethan's financial movements. We even found proof that he'd been siphoning money from our joint savings into a private account for over a year. Quietly. Carefully. $1,000 here, $2,000 there. All of it going to fund his new life with the girlfriend. The reunion was Patricia's idea. Well, sort of. She said I needed a controlled environment. Somewhere with witnesses. Somewhere I could present the evidence in a way that couldn't be ignored or spun or denied. When Agnes announced the family reunion 2 weeks later, it felt like the universe was handing me a stage. You know what Ethan told everyone? I said to Jen. He told them I was having a breakdown. That I was imagining things. That he was the devoted husband trying to hold the family together while his crazy wife fell apart. Jen's face went hard. Son of a bitch. Language, Anna murmured in her sleep, and we both almost laughed. Here's what I didn't expect about divorce. The paperwork. My God, the paperwork. Patricia sent me a document last week that was 47 pages long. 47 pages just to say we're not married anymore. There were sections about property division and custody arrangements and retirement accounts and debt allocation. Every part of our life together reduced to line items on a spreadsheet. Reading it made me feel two things at once. One, deep bone-crushing sadness. Because once upon a time Ethan and I had been in love. We'd slow danced in the kitchen. We'd stayed up all night talking about baby names. We'd held hands in the hospital when Anna was born. And two, absolute crystalline clarity. Because the man I fell in love with didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. Maybe I'd been in love with a story I told myself, and the real Ethan was always underneath waiting to come out. The custody arrangement was the hardest part. Patricia pushed for full custody with supervised visitation. Given the evidence of Ethan's systematic campaign to paint me as mentally unstable, plus the hidden bank accounts and the affair, she said we had a strong case. Strong enough that Ethan's lawyer would probably advise him to settle rather than go to court. But the idea of Anna going to visit her father, even supervised, made my stomach clench. I kept picturing Agnes there whispering poison in Anna's ear. Your mother is unstable. Your mother broke up our family. Your mother is the reason Daddy had to leave. I told Patricia this. She nodded, adjusted her incredible orange scarf, and said, Mrs. Morrison, the family court system is not perfect. But it is better than the court of Agnes Morrison's backyard barbecue. And I promise you your daughter is going to be just fine. Because she has a mother who fought for her. That word. Fought. I'd never thought of myself as a fighter before. I was the peacemaker. The people pleaser. The one who bit her tongue and smiled through gritted teeth because keeping the peace was easier than rocking the boat. I'd spent my whole marriage trying not to make waves. Then I made a tsunami. Anna woke up around 8. She blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling, then looked at me with those big brown eyes. Mommy, are we still at Aunt Jen's? Yeah, baby. We're having a little vacation. She thought about this. Is Daddy coming? No, sweetheart. Daddy's not coming. She nodded like this was just a fact of the universe now. Then she asked for cereal and I took her to the kitchen and Jen made her pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse and the morning went on. Just a regular morning. Pancakes and juice and cartoons on the couch. That's the thing about kids. They adapt. They accept the new normal faster than you think. Anna didn't ask about the fight at the family reunion. She didn't ask about the crying or the yelling or the envelope. She just wanted to know if Aunt Jen had the channel with the singing dinosaurs. When I finally checked my phone that afternoon, most of the messages were from family members I barely talked to. Thinking of you, Lily. You're so brave. Let me know if you need anything. The same people who'd been at barbecues and birthday parties for years watching Agnes treat me like garbage, never saying a word. I deleted them all. If you didn't speak up when it was uncomfortable, you don't get to offer comfort when it's convenient. There were a few messages from people who mattered. My cousin Rebecca, who'd always been kind. My old colleague from the library who said she had a room available if I needed it. Mike, who sent a single text, proud of you, sis-in-law. Agnes hasn't left her bedroom in 12 hours. That last one made me smile. Ethan's voicemails started angry. How could you do this to me, then moved to desperate. Please, Lily, we can work this out. We can get counseling. Think about Anna. Then threatened. If you go through with this divorce, I will fight for full custody. I will tell the court you're unstable. I have documentation, Lily. I have evidence. I almost laughed at that last one. He still didn't get it. He still thought he was playing the same game. I forwarded every voicemail to Patricia. She sent me back a single line, "This is very useful, Mrs. Morrison. Please continue to save everything." By the end of the week, the legal machine was in motion. Papers were filed. Accounts were frozen. Ethan's lawyer sent a letter requesting mediation, which Patricia said was a good sign. It meant they knew they couldn't win in court. The apartment was a small 2-bedroom near the elementary school. Nothing fancy. But it had big windows and a little patio where I could put a chair and watch the sunset. Anna picked out her room color. Purple, obviously. Because she's 7 and 7-year-old girls always pick purple. The first night thereafter Anna was asleep, I sat on the patio and watched the sky turn orange and pink. The same kind of sky I'd driven through after the reunion. Beautiful. Ordinary. Mine. I thought about the envelope. It was in a safety deposit box now next to the lawyer's files and the copies of the bank statements and the screenshots of the affair. Not a weapon anymore. Just evidence. Just paper. But every time I started to doubt myself, I remembered the weight of it in my hand. I remembered 62 people falling silent. I remembered Agnes's face crumpling like a paper bag. And I felt strong. You know what the strangest part is? All those years I thought I was weak. I thought being quiet was weak. I thought avoiding conflict was weak. I thought biting my tongue and smiling and keeping the peace was weak. But I was wrong. Being quiet wasn't weakness. It was patience. And when patience runs out, when it finally truly runs out, there's nothing more powerful in the world. I took a sip of wine. Listened to the crickets. Felt the evening breeze on my face. Somewhere across town Ethan was probably sitting in his half-empty house waiting for his girlfriend to realize that a divorced man with supervised visitation and a frozen bank account isn't such a prize after all. And Agnes was probably staring at the phone waiting for her friends to call, waiting for someone to tell her she was right. But the phone wasn't ringing. And me. I was on a patio that wasn't much bigger than a closet in an apartment that needed new paint with a sleeping 7-year-old who still believed in singing dinosaurs. I should have felt scared. I should have felt broken. But I didn't. I felt like someone who'd been holding her breath for 10 years and finally exhaled. The next morning Anna asked if Daddy was coming back. No baby, I said, pouring her cereal. He's not. Oh, she said. Then, can I have extra marshmallows? Sure. She grinned. And just like that the new normal began.